Welcome to another chess game analysis video. So today I again want to show you a game of mine that I played in a classical tournament last week, and it features an opening that we again have not yet had on the channel, so let's just dive into the game. Without further ado, d4 f5, the Dutch defense, and to be honest I don't even know theory at all, and I was just hoping to play my London system going with bishop f4, but somehow you're gonna see what happened. But I don't think that you should play like your typical London system. You should probably just learn a little bit of theory, even though it's not an opening that you're gonna really see a lot, to be honest. So we have the standard Dutch setup, and with the knight here, the bishop going here, these three pawns, and then short castles. And I tried to have my London system set up with the pawns here and bringing the bishop out to d3. And after castles, c3, stabilizing the center, d6, he plays a little bit passively, but the engine says that this is all alright, and my opponent probably knew a little bit of theory here. I brought my queen out and gave a check, provoking e6, and I thought this was a little bit of a weakness. Now the pawns are already pretty far advanced. Maybe with g4 and h4 I can at some point attack, but first I need to develop knight bd2, knight c6 development, and here you could short castle. It's a little bit the safer approach, but I wanted to attack. I thought, okay, this needs to be punished. f5 is normally not a very solid or like valid move that you play. The Dutch defense somehow has a little bit of a bad reputation, being not so sound, even though the engine here in this position says it's perfectly fine what black is doing. But I just thought, okay, throughout the game, by the way, I thought I was way better, even though the engine says that there were some positions where actually black was very close to having a winning position, so very interesting. I decided to go long castles. That's my usual way of playing, long castles and then attacking with the pawns on the king side. He played a5. Now he tries to attack here on the king side, on the queen side, where I castled, which is the correct way to play. So my idea in this position is to play h4, h5 and attack, obviously. But this knight is bothering me a lot. If I just go here immediately, I was afraid, okay, the knight comes here, attacks the bishop, and blocks the pawn. The g-pawn can't be pushed because he already played f5 here. So I thought, okay, where is my attack here? Bishop g5 is an idea to trade off the knight after h6 asking a question. Bishop takes and bishop takes. Now I at least traded off this very nice defending knight. And for me personally, I thought this king was not that well placed here, with the pawns being so far advanced. I have a lot of attacking potential here. The queen also looking in this direction. Maybe the bishop can at some point sacrifice. There are some ideas. He played, first of all, I brought my rook into the game. Rook d1. Solid move. I didn't want to overcommit first. This is something that I had to learn in my chess games. I often just overcommitted and just pushed the pawns, which is normally, you need to be a little bit more patient. And here I thought I played this correctly, bringing the rooks here, aligning with the king, and now I'm prepared to at some point attack next few moves. He had a4 in between move queen c2, kicking the queen. Knight e7, I thought in the game this was a very nice move, prophylactically defends these squares, and makes it a little bit harder to attack, and brings another defending piece into the defense when one of the knights was already traded. Now another knight comes in here. In the game I was not sure here which of these pawns I should actually push. I decided both of them are actually possible, but I decided for h4. Interesting enough, and this is something I want to show, that sometimes like calculation is not perfect. g4 is actually a little bit better, and I thought it was very interesting to actually open up the g file because the black king is on the g file. But I was actually afraid I made a huge miscalculation, which in retrospect is quite funny. But I thought f takes g4, normal move taking, rook takes g4, and now I was afraid of e5 attacking the rook. But when you look at the position now, there is actually nothing really happening. You just move the rook back, and you're ready to double up on the g file, make pressure against this pawn. this is already 3 times attack now. In the game, I saw this position and I was afraid of, I was very afraid here attacking the rook, and once the rook moves, e4 forking one of my, the 2 pieces, and then I calculated further, the bishop can save itself, but then d5, and again both of my pieces are attacked and I'm losing a piece. Funny thing is, in this position you are going to lose a piece, but after e4, maybe some of you have already realized this in the game. In the video, I have not realized it in the game. You can just take the pawn. It's not even defended. I don't know what I saw here. Probably saw some ghosts again. Just wanted to show this variation, that sometimes even in a classical game you get so lost in all these variations and in thought that it's not that difficult to calculate g4, f takes, then rook takes, and here, yeah, maybe it's like 4 or 5 moves. You need to calculate all of this through, but it's not that difficult. You can just take the pawn. But this is a variation that what would have been interesting, g4, opening the g file. I played, because I was afraid of this variation losing a piece. The interesting thing is, in this variation, you also, even if you miscalculate this, you can even sacrifice, instead of moving the rook back, you can sacrifice it here. And after knight takes, you bring the other rook into the game. And the engine says it's like minus 0.8, so black is a little bit better, but you're at least gonna get back your piece, and then you have got 2 pieces for a rook and a pawn, which is normally better, but it's an unclear position, I would say. So this would have been an alternative. Rook takes, I calculated this, but I chose to not go into all these complications. I just played h4. I thought this was the safe approach here, just trying to create more weaknesses with the h-pawn, which is perfectly playable, but g4 would have been a little bit stronger. If you are like a little bit better with calculation, you could have gone for this, I guess. So king f7, he tries to evacuate the king immediately, which I think makes a lot of sense, because h5 was coming, but now g4 is coming. So now I thought, okay, after all these trades, I can take here with check with my bishop, and then the rook is safe. So I finally pushed both of my pawns. Rook h8, now he brings another rook into the defense. It's not that sound what he's doing, but it somehow, interestingly enough, worked out in the game. As we're gonna see, I was not able to attack here in the middle game and punish him for having this king here, while all my pieces are basically trying to line up against the king. So I played g4, g5, attacking the bishop, and now I basically force him to open the h file. He moves, he takes himself. He could have moved the bishop instead, but he chose to take. I take bishop back, and now I have an open h file. At least I opened some files against his king. And now I tried to again open the f file, because the king is now in the f file, so e4 makes a lot of sense for me. He develops. He's not afraid. You have to give it to him that he somehow thought, well, white doesn't really have an attack, which is correct. I'm a little bit better here, but I don't really have a concrete way of exploiting the position. Which I don't normally like to play these positions where it's a little bit vague, like you have a space advantage, but you have nothing concrete. So I tried to open stuff with e5, which is not the correct way to play, actually. The engine insists here in stopping this a-pawn. The engine always wants to, like with black, try to open this line and create counterplay, which is interesting because you can't always just defend with this king. You have to, at some point, create something of your own. But e5, the interesting thing is it could have been punished, I think, if you just take the pawn. And in the conversation after the game, my opponent pointed out that in retrospect, you need to take the pawn. After, like, I would have taken with the knight. Taking with the pawn would have been better, but in the game I thought, okay, if he's taking, I take with knight. But he can now give up his bishop here. Bishop takes e5, he takes e5. Bishop c6 now activating all of his pieces. And the king is very safe on f7, and suddenly it's me who's getting in trouble. And the engine says black is winning here. I'm not sure if in a classical game you would have actually won this position. It's still a lot to play and material is equal, but this could have been a position that I definitely don't like to play here. So taking would have been correct. He chose to play it a little bit differently. He activated his knight with the idea of maybe going in here. Maybe if the pawn is gone, you can even go here. So now I took e takes d6, he takes d6, kind of destabilizing the position a little bit, trading off my e pawn that now my rooks can go onto the e file. First of all, I traded a pair of rooks here. On the h file, queen takes, queen is a little bit misplaced, and I thought after knight c4, the queen has to go back, which would have been an okay move actually to just defend the pawn. But he played king e7, and it's still an equal position. I can't exploit his positioning of the king at all, even though I'm constantly trying to open up position and opening up lines and trying to somehow create something. It's very unclear in this position. I played rook e1, again aligning against the king. Maybe there are now some sacrificing ideas here because the pawn is obviously pinned. So he played b5, a good move, kicking the knight. Knight e3, knight takes, and we have f takes. So the interesting thing is that now he somehow managed to again get my e file cluttered with my own pawns. The problem is here, you would love to take with the rook here to keep this attack and here attacking against the pawn and having the e file opened up. Now the queen, which was a little bit misplaced in my opinion before, is very handy on h1 because queen h1 check. And now you have to move the king, bishop c6 attacking the knight, knight has to move, rook h8, and the rook is going to come into the position. And I think this is very interesting how suddenly black gets a lot of counterplay. And the engine says it is winning for black. I thought probably you can hold a draw with white, but it's still very uncomfortable to play this. And yeah. So this was the problem. I saw this. I thought it was way too passive. I don't want to play like that. That's why I took with the f pawn, and I thought, okay, at some point I can still manage to somehow get trade off the f pawn now. Rook c8, queen e2. Now again trying to get as many pieces onto the e file where the black king is located. It's very interesting, I think, that he somehow holds this position for 26 moves. In the game, I was like, okay, the engine is probably giving +5 or something for white, but it's not the case. It is minus 0.5 for black. Black is a little bit better, even though I was like constantly, I was like, oh, I'm attacking, but okay. b5 now, before trying to open the line, the pawn is pinned. Very nice move, I think. c4, he forced me basically to advance my pawn. Queen e8, e4. Now the pawns are rolling, and now I try to trade off the pawns so that the e file is again open and I can attack. I still was in attacking mood whole game. He played f4. He tried now to block things, and I thought here he goes a little bit too much into drawing territory. Instead of just taking the pawn and after queen takes, this is a little bit better for white actually, but it's nothing special. Again, you don't have anything concrete here. It's just a little bit of a space advantage, a little bit of activity of the pieces, but there is nothing here. You can actually hold this perfectly well with black. He thought he needs to somehow close the position even further by playing f4, but now the position is actually somewhat it's somewhat better for white, and the attack is now, I think, decisive, or not the attack. He somehow still managed to actually withstand the attack, but now it's positionally winning, I think, for white. e5, now trying to open up lines against the king again. He blocks with d5, but now c5, and he managed to block everything, which is okay, but he's got the bishop pair, and normally with the bishop pair, you want to have an open position instead of closed one, while I still have a knight, which is very nicely placed, which can always come into the attack, maybe even here, attacking the pawn, maybe here if it is needed. So I think strategically, without being up material, this is now winning for white. Rook b8, rook h1, now I occupy my h file. Queen f7, he has to move something. Rook h7, now pinning the bishop. rook h8. Now I managed to trade off my rook. And you basically are left now with a useless bishop pair and an overextended pawn here on f4, which can now be attacked. Knight h4. Now this is a backwards pawn which can't be defended anymore. You see the knight is very nice, comes into the enemy position very nicely. He now, instead of giving up the g-pawn, gives up the f-pawn, f3, queen takes f3, queen takes f3, knight takes f3. And this is now a very illustrative endgame because he's completely winning for white, being up a pawn, but the position is just, with this bishop pair, none of the two bishops can actually participate in the game, whereas I have a very nice bishop, which works together very nice with the pawns on dark squares, whereas I still have a knight which can always come into the position wherever it wants to. It can even go here. Maybe you try to have an outpost here or here. So the knight is very much a strong piece here on the board. He doesn't have a move bishop e8. Now I activate my king c2. My plan is now to win these pawns and then with 3 connected pass pawns win the game. King f7, he doesn't have a move a3. Now destabilizing the position. You see that the pawns somehow restrict my king, so I have to kind of destroy this barrier with a3. B takes a3, b takes a3. King g7, and you see on the other side my pawns are also very nicely placed. They can't be attacked by opposing bishops, and they control very nicely so that the black king can't enter the position. And after king c3, my opponent actually resigned the game. I quickly want to show you what happens if you don't trade off the pawns. You can also give a check here, b3 check, but now the idea is king c3, you have to play something. King b4, you have to play something. Bishop b5, trading off the bishop, and now you just win both of the pawns, and now you have 3 connected pass pawns, which is winning. And basically the same idea applies after you take the pawn, and now you enter with the king, basically trade off your light square bishop, and you win this position quite easily. I think there's no way that the black bishop and king can hold all these pass pawns at some point. The knight can even win this pawn, and then you have a pass pawn on the opposite side of the board. This is completely crushing. And my opponent resigned the game, being down a pawn in the position. I think a very illustrative game where I just kept attacking against the Dutch defense, and he held very nicely until like move 30, which I really pay him respect for that. He played that very nicely. An opening that I was not very familiar with, to be honest, and I didn't know a lot of theory. Made some risky choices, again, long castles attacking, and in the end it paid off. I thought a very nice game, and especially the end game, which I keep getting better and better, which I absolutely like. So I hope you enjoyed watching this game. I hope you sent me some games that you played yourself so that I can analyze something. Also check out my Instagram for posts, which I sometimes post about my life or my YouTube channel career. Check out my Twitch where I sometimes stream chess and study sessions for university. And see you in the next video. Bye.